Christian.
Jesus died on a cross. I go to church every Sunday. This guy out here. Then I read that Jesus died on a cross for a rotten hooker.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday.
I thought I was a good Christian.
I go to church every Sunday. I'm a very religious person.
I thought I was a good Christian.
The very lie the serpent told to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Spreads confusion and promotes lies. The gospel.
Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Ken?
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Oh, I didn't hear the music at all. I heard nothing.
Okay, go. We're on.
Okay. Hey, everybody. It is Sunday, July 28th, 2013. Non-Religious Life. I'm your host, Ken. With me up in the Bay Area, we have Jason.
Hey, what's up?
And Bob.
How's it going?
And I know we're a little bit late this week. We had some scheduling difficulties, but
we always have scheduling difficulties.
All the more time to receive some feedback from our listeners. We had a tweet sent to us, which I think this is the first time we've ever been tweeted at.
Yeah.
Is it?
That I know
Jason
of.
would know better than me.
Yeah. One that we want to talk about on the air anyway, I mean.
Yeah. Yikes. And the tweet was about, we had mentioned a Gnostic seminary that's down the street from me in Los Angeles. And don't worry, we will be examining that. I'm actually waiting for our good friend Matt Brake to come out to Los Angeles the middle of next month. And it's on the agenda for the two of us to visit.
Are you guys going on a field trip?
We are.
You're going
We're
on
gonna
a
take
date?
trip. We were going to go see Conan O'Brien, but apparently he's not filming. So he'll be on hiatus, lazy bastard. So yeah, we will definitely get to you about that. I'm as interested as anyone could be. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be coming in future events. In other news, anyone who's been on the internet in the last few hours has probably seen it floating around. I caught it on BuzzFeed, but UC Riverside Associate Professor Reza Aslan just recently released a book called Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth, and was on Fox.com doing an interview where instead of focusing on the fact that, he's this established, historian of religion, they focus on the fact that he's a Muslim writing about Jesus, and it's just goes on for way too long with the reporter just being like, but you're Muslim.
How
Muslim.
dare he?
And he's like, no, I'm a scholar.
Yeah.
And just
my
before the
job.
show, actually, we had Bob watch it. Jason and I had seen it earlier today. And Bob, what was your reaction to this?
I wish I could have been like in his head when he kept going, I have a PhD. This is my job. It doesn't matter whether I'm Muslim or not. It was really funny, and they kept circling back around to that, and he couldn't understand why they wouldn't let it go.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fairly clear why they wouldn't let it go. They couldn't believe that this Muslim was writing about, Jesus, unless there was some sort of like ulterior motive to what was happening.
I know, it sounds like a book an atheist would write.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. He's, Reza Aslan is he's a historian of religions. He has 4 degrees in the field, and including one of them is a PhD in, I believe, the history of religion, or history of religions. And like a lot of historians who follow religion, he has his own idea of what the evidence about an historical Jesus, if he existed, what he would look like. And he ascribes to the idea that Jesus was a zealot. And
that's to you and me. That's not a new idea.
No, it's not a new idea at all. And they just couldn't believe it. Like, they were like, "But you're a Muslim, like, but this, but that." And he's like, "So what?" He's like, it just shows you haven't read the book. You have no idea what it's about. And they're like, "But you never say you're a Muslim anywhere." He's like, "It's on page 2 of my book."
Well, he also talks about, he goes, I write about religions. That's my job. I've written about Hinduism. I've written about, he does this huge list. And he goes, Christianity just happens to be one. And it's really not even about Christianity. It's about the historical Jesus. And they're just...
Yeah, exactly. He's written a number of books, including, No God But God, which I believe is about Islam. He's written about Judaism, about Hinduism. Yeah, he's a scholar of religion, which means he researches and writes about religion.
Well, I would say, I would argue that no matter who you are, your religious views and worldview tends to bias your opinion, no matter who you are. However, someone who has a PhD in some kind of academia, that means that you're trained to filter out those personal biases.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the things that he says in the interview is, Islam has ideas about who Jesus was and what Jesus did. And he expressly says, he's like, I discard and disprove a number of those things in this book, like that the evidence doesn't point to these things that Islam believes about Jesus. He debunks or he kind of filters out and shines a sort of light of skepticism on the virgin birth and the resurrection and stuff like that. But the golden moment for me, the real pin the tail on the donkey, I was like, this is exactly, I knew it was coming, was when this Fox reporter, who has to have scholarship explained to her like she's a cranky 2-year-old having bedtime explained to her, brings up William Lane Craig. And she's like, well, but William Lane Craig says, and it's like, yeah, of course he does. He's a fundamentalist theologian. Like, his perception of what Jesus was is colored by his faith, by definition. Like, he's a theologian. He's not an historian.
I think the shining moment for this, it's twofold. One, the shining moment in the interview itself was when she said, "That's like a Democrat writing a book about Reagan. You can't do that."
Yeah.
The second part is, I think it's great because Fox News just sold that motherfucker a lot of books.
Yeah.
Oh, a ton of books. Oh my God.
Well, I actually saw him, oddly enough. I get all my news from fake news shows. So
Yes.
I
Fox
watch
News?
a lot of the
You watch
Daily
a lot
Show.
of Oh wait, no.
Which I think provides better balance and insight than Fox News. But he was on the Daily Show, and and it made me interested to read his book, and I'm even more curious to read it. Like, that's going to be on the pile of stuff to read, because now I want to see how he deals with the problems that guys like Price bring up.
Yeah, and even guys like Price admit to the fact that if Jesus did exist, a zealot mentality is definitely a persuasive one. Like, That's a of all the historical Jesus arguments, it's one of the better ones. When you look at things like, the jumping off point for Reza Aslan is that Jesus was crucified. And historically, I mean, anyone who understands what happened in Rome, especially in the Near East, crucifixion was a very specific punishment for people who committed sedition and treason, crimes against the state. And he brings up the fact that, the word in Greek that gets translated to thieves, the two people crucified next to Jesus, doesn't mean thief. Colloquially in English, that's kind of a bad translation. Lestos means it means bandit.
Yeah, bandit. That's what they called the brigands.
Yes, brigands. Like, these are people who disrupted trade and sort of fomented rebellion in areas. They were.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I really like that you did because do you remember our first show? And the guy was presenting his evidence for Jesus, and one of the things that he said, and it's an argument I've heard again since then, was that other people died for him. Other people died for his cause, and they were like, and do you think that people would die for that if they didn't actually believe it to be true? And or if it wasn't true, that's the argument. So Jesus was resurrected. The disciples knew about it. They died for it. If it wasn't true, would they have died for it? And but isn't that the definition of what a zealot would do?
Yeah, no, exactly. The zealots, especially the Jewish zealots, were kind of fomenting rebellion. And this is something that actually Matt and I are going to actually eventually write on, is the idea of empire and with the Jews, specifically that they have a very anti-imperialist mentality. The Jews, especially in first century Palestine, wanted nothing more than to be rid of the Romans. They wanted to establish their own kingdom. And when you look back at some of the things that Jesus says in some of the synoptics, and you kind of put on those, first century Judea glasses and kind of filter it out, you do hear a lot of this anti-imperialist sort of sentiment. You see, in both the, in the synoptics and John, you have the disrupting of the temple, which is kind of a big deal. Jesus goes in and turns over the money changers table. That's huge. It definitely shows that he's kind of a rabble rouser.
Yeah, he was. That was him making waves.
Yeah. My counterpoint to Jesus, the whole Jesus story in general, is that if he did that, he would have been killed on the spot. But then again, the fact that he wasn't, the idea that Jesus wasn't immediately killed for disrupting the temple business, probably shows that he might have had several people with him armed.
Well, we've talked about that too, about how the temple wasn't like one room in a church. It was like a big open air area as big as a football field.
Yeah, it's a big area. The court of the Gentiles alone was huge, let alone the inner areas. The Jerusalem temple was a massive complex. It'd be like someone going to Staples Center here in Los Angeles and driving out every single concession worker.
Yeah, you're not going to do that alone. You got to have help
and security not stopping you. It's a big to do.
So you're saying this is the first Fight Club?
It might have been the first Fight Club.
I don't know. I just really like that. I think that most people have this idea of Jesus coming in and he says all these new and radical things and and that he's the only one. And Reza's just trying to put him in the context of the time that he lived, where he was one of many apocalyptic preachers.
Yeah. He was a zealot when zealotry was kind of common, actually. But yeah, the jumping off point for Reza Aslan is that, what do we know, with big air quotes around know about Jesus, and that's the thread that seems to be holding all of these sort of Jesus stories together is that he was crucified, which would point to the fact that you'd think he's some sort of seditionist, anti-imperialist, treason. The Romans didn't pin people to sticks for no reason. It's a pretty horrific punishment, and they did it for the sake of deterring people. They didn't give a shit about much so long as you paid your taxes.
Yeah, I seem to recall somewhere reading or being told that rape and murder didn't warrant crucifixion.
No. Especially on the frontiers of the empire, largely lawless areas. Bear in mind, Judea had been a Roman province for less than a century at the time that Jesus lived. Really, it had been a client state for less than a century. It had been Roman province for even less than that, a few decades maybe. It's a very old punishment that goes back to the Persians, and the Romans adopted it in that region because it was particularly nasty. But it wouldn't do well to use your worst punishment on things they saw as trivial, to really drive the point home. Here's what you get.
I really like Fox News dropping the ball that someone who's a Muslim, what business do they have writing a book about Jesus?
Well, let's take it a step further. What is their motivation to stir up this?
Well, to discredit him.
Well, no, not. I mean, I think it might be even more. Why do they want to discredit him? Why would they go to such extent to say that a Muslim cannot speak of Jesus?
I think there's a. And Jason, I know you know media as well as I, at least. Yeah. There's newsworthy stuff and there's not newsworthy stuff. And what makes something newsworthy is kind of how much it stirs the pot. If this guy was a Christian who wrote a book about Jesus, historical Jesus, it'd be a cute footnote.
But the part we're missing on this, I agree with you 100%. If this was a marketing tactic, it would come from his publisher. It wouldn't come from Fox News. It wouldn't come from, because if you look at his face, unless they are really great actors and set this up to be really well done, when she starts off the question, he's in shock. His face is like, what?
Well, here's the thing. I think there's a reason why the publisher sent the press release to Fox News in the first place.
Do you think you're saying that it may not have been pitched as a Muslim or as the way it turned out, but it may have had a slant to it?
I think it probably wasn't pitched for that reason, but I'm sure he was. You can tell from the get-go he was kind of braced for it.
Well, anybody goes on Fox News is braced for something.
Yeah, he was ready, and I feel like, to his publisher, they're probably ecstatic. This
sold books.
Great.
I'm gonna buy one.
Controversy sells, as well as anyone knows. Controversy sells.
But the narrative that they put forth is what I'm outside of the marketing and what will become of it. But the narrative that Fox News is putting forward with this, that a Muslim cannot speak of Jesus or write of Jesus. What is that?
I think they probably they want to discredit him. they're trying to do the bait and switch. Bring him on, make him feel comfortable, and then kind of, just O'Reilly him, try to talk over him and make him look like an idiot.
But what do they gain? I mean, why is it bad for a Muslim to talk about Jesus? Why is it bad for him to reevaluate the zealot aspect of historical Jesus? Why is this bad? I mean, where is the controversy on it? Because to me, if you talk to a rational person, say like if I met somebody at a coffee shop and I'm sitting there and I'm fairly knowledgeable, say I'm fairly knowledgeable about historical Jesus and the zealot aspect of it, and I was having a conversation with somebody in a coffee shop about this, I don't think it would be a hostile conversation. It would just be
no.
So what is the motivation for this?
It's in my mind, it's based in the idea that Muslims have certain ideas about Jesus that are theologically important. I mean, in the Quran, Jesus is the second most quoted person in the entire book, only behind Muhammad. He's an incredibly important central figure to that religion. But their view of him is vastly different. And you can see when they start the interview, she kicks it off by accusing him of just spreading Muslim propaganda about Jesus and trying to slander Jesus, essentially.
Yeah.
Which he deflects because his religion has nothing to do with it. I'm sure, he's a reputable scholar. I've never seen anything to discredit his work as an historian. I don't necessarily agree with his what he takes away from the historical, evidence, but I respect him as a scholar.
Yeah.
And I feel like they wanted to do the bait and switch. They wanted to bring him on, and they had these questions lined up, and it's like, all right, we're going to get him, like, show him that a Muslim can't write about Jesus. To which he then just kind of talks down to them, and it's like, no, you're being dumb. Like,
yeah, but
I'm a scholar.
Do you think they're hoping for some backlash? Because, look, a guy like me, I was entertaining the idea of buying the book and reading it. Now, watching that interview, it sort of cemented that idea in my head. Like, yeah, I really want to read that book now.
So you're saying you had it in your mind that you wanted to buy it before hearing this, okay?
And but come on, if you're if you're somebody that has a lot of deep religious convictions in the heart of the country, you're not going to get this book now. You're going to be completely turned off by it because it challenges such notions as the virgin birth. And
yeah, exactly.
And this notion was challenged by some Muslim.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really think, I know that there's that saying that there's no such thing as bad press, and we're thinking like, oh, he's getting a lot of free press out of this, but maybe not. Maybe there is a backlash. Maybe this book gets blacklisted on library lists and school reading lists and
only in Texas and other
only in Texas,
only in other fundamental states.
But again, but with regards to textbooks and stuff, we all know so goes Texas, so goes the rest of the nation. So maybe they're hoping that the backlash is sufficient that it'll suppress book sales.
But social media is already showing differently. Social media is already pumping this up and they're marketing it as a win for his book.
Well, and granted, probably because, and I would attribute that to the population of guys like you and me and Ken who 10 years ago we were quiet as mice. They didn't even know we were out there. But now with this new medium where we get to be in control, like social media and podcasts and things of that nature, now we're more vocal than ever, and we're more numerous than they thought.
I just want to say for the record 10 years ago, I was still as vocal as I am now.
I know.
I had.
All right, all right, not me. I didn't even know what the hell a podcast was 10 years ago.
No, I think you're right. I think the thing Fox News has on their side is that a lot of people who watch Fox News only watch Fox News, and whatever Fox News puts out, they sort of take in as, yeah, that's right. They agree with the stance from the get-go.
Well, I think Fox News was a move on Fox News' part. If we're gonna follow those lines that maybe they are trying to discredit him to suppress book sales, that's a move from a playbook that's 50 years old, but until very recently was pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, a smear campaign like that 10, 15 years ago probably would work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is just guessing and speculation, but it's fun to do.
Yeah.
It is fun to do.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's part of a marketing. Even if they didn't go into it planning this or having, an idea that this might happen, they walked out of there saying, "Look, this is gold. Let's run with it."
Yeah, look, and look, you also got to admit, like Fox News they're very good at pandering to their audience.
Yeah.
But they've also been shown to be like notoriously stupid. Like, remember when they had the picture of the couple kissing, and it was like, stand up for one man, one woman marriage, and the picture was two women. It's just like the one woman kind of looked like a guy.
Yeah.
But it's stupid stuff like that bites them in the ass. And this is in the context of discrediting the author and throwing dirt on the book and launching a subtle smear campaign, it was textbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really was.
We live in a day and age now where something like that is going to backfire. I hope it does.
Yeah.
What it is, I mean, if you look at social media, it's already a win for him. If we're looking at it as a win or lose type thing, he won from this.
I think he totally won because of this. He came out and he made that reporter look like a moron. Like,
well, it wasn't hard.
Oh my god! Like he had to just. He's like, I don't know why we're even talking about this. Like, he's like, it's clear you haven't read the book. You have no idea what it's about. He's like, I challenge you to find one interview that doesn't say I'm a Muslim. Like, he's like, I say it on page 2 in my biography. Like, this isn't some secret. Like, and what's funny is like I believe he actually converted to Christianity for a while.
Yeah, because she started off by saying that he was Christian and converted back.
Yeah,
there must be something wrong with him.
He's an Iranian American. He was born Muslim, but he moved to the United States when he was young. He converted to Christianity, I believe, because he wanted to be more accepted in American culture. And was Christian. His wife's Christian. His mother's Christian. He converted his mother, but he went back to Islam because I don't know, it is right for him. That's
because he's a sleeper cell. No, I'm just kidding.
He's a sleeper cell, exactly.
I bet mom's pissed.
Yeah, right. But that's that's his backstory. Like, so he has that vested interest in Christianity as is. Like, he was Christian for several years, and he has Christian family. So, but I don't think that has anything necessarily to do with it. So, but I also at the same time think it makes it dumb to ask him what his interest in Christianity might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the record, I don't think he's a sleeper cell.
Why would you're a Muslim? Why would you be interested in Jesus?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're reaching the halfway mark, and I know Bob has a lot of apologies to
I make no apology. Well, yeah, I do. I apologize all the time because I know I could always do better. I
apologize for getting so off track last show.
No, we do that, and Aaron, we've been corresponding with Aaron over these intelligent design arguments, and his response to our last show is in the comments of episode 76, and and admittedly, we tend to ramble sometimes, and
Don't say we.
you didn't say a word. But you know, we're trying to address his arguments as best we can, one at a time. He's written an email that we're responding to, and then we'll post that with our comments.
Wait, I need to back up because you're making promises to people in an email without even talking to me since I produced this show.
Yeah, I sent him to Ken.
Yeah, Ken writes up the text. So if we do get audios, I've set in place that all the audio will go there and then it can be edited.
Well, this last one I asked him to send an email because we botched the audio last time.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
And we didn't botch it. We just didn't communicate between us how we should handle this. So, but anyway,
in any event, so the whole experience, right? So it's kind of a learning experience for all of us, and we'll get better at it. But it has been illuminating in a couple of regards, and I, you know, Aaron claims an understanding of evolutionary theory. He claims that he understands it and he gets it. But when I read his arguments, I realize like now he's missing a piece. He's missing a piece of the puzzle. And so maybe we can talk about that a little bit. And one of the things that I realized like how he's missing the point was we sort of sidetracked yesterday or the last episode about, you know, that analogy of monkeys at typewriters generating random bits of letters and then that produces the works of Shakespeare. And his response, he was like, well, that doesn't make any sense because if the monkeys made a whole bunch of errors, they would go extinct or something like that. He was and I was like, no, the monkeys don't matter. It could be anything. It's nothing. The monkeys are just a vehicle for the metaphor. It has nothing to do with monkeys. It has to do with generating random bits of information and then keeping what works, discarding what doesn't, and then from the randomness you generate complexity.
Yeah,
Monkeys are just...
and here's the thing that I said, because you sent me the text, the email, and I kind of added my thoughts really quickly. When you talk about an analogy, that's what it is. It's an analogy. It's by definition imperfect. It's a simplified version to try and get the idea to be comprehended. If it was anything more than that, it would be an explanation. But short of being an evolutionary biologist myself, and as far as I know, Bob, you don't hold any advanced degrees in evolutionary biology?
Not biology, no.
No. You know, we have to use an analogy to get the idea across. It's by definition flawed, but you should be able to appreciate the concept.
Yeah, it's a simple tool that helps you get your head around the idea that something that generates random gibberish can, with the right selective pressures over time, can create something that's complex and meaningful.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. That's all it is. I wasn't speaking to the fitness of monkeys at typewriters at all.
Yeah. Of course, you know, even just using the terms complex and meaningful is incredibly loaded. It's an utter value judgment.
Agreed. It's complex and meaningful to me.
Totally. Yes, complex and meaningful to you, which is, you know, utterly arbitrary. And that's, I feel like that's kind of the disconnect that happens a lot of the times here is, you know, they start using these terms like, you know, complex and information and, you know, meaningful, and it's those don't work. You know, you have to understand that right there, calling it complex or meaningful or information, is an analogy in itself. DNA coding is not information. It's not complex. per se. It's complicated,
Yeah.
but it's not complex. It's chemistry doing what chemistry does.
That's the cool thing about the sequence of DNA too. If you look at it, DNA is only a sequence of a very finite number of proteins put together in a finite number of ways that generates vast combinations of itself, and so it's in those large combinations, that large combinatorial space, that it has to make the complexity. Meaning, there's only how many nucleotides are there? If I remember,
5.
Right, so
There are
5.
5.
That's it.
5. There's 4 used in RNA and 4 used in DNA, but there's 5 total. Yeah.
So with just those 5 nucleotides, you create all of human existence. All of the diversity on Earth is created with just those nucleotides. So very simple sets of instructions can create large complex systems. Did you ever play with the Dawkins biomorphs?
No.
Oh, it's really cool. So he does this in The Blind Watchmaker, and what he does is he has a sequence of like it's just a funny geometric shape, and there's like 9 characteristics that can vary 1 degree or another, and it makes copies of itself, and the copies vary by degrees. And so what happens is like 1 degree says like how big it is, or how small it gets, or how many branches it has, or how many branches those branches have. I forget exactly what all they are. And you just keep hitting the space bar, and you get a new generation of these biomorphs. And if you select for one that has like bushy branches, if you keep selecting for the bushy branches in 9 or 10 generations, all the biomorphs, all the progenitor biomorphs look like big bushy branches. That trait carries forward. So you've selected for that thing. And it generates these really cool abstract shapes. They wind up looking like insects a lot of time too, like insects or trees. But with just a couple of very simple rules, it generates these complicated structures.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, actually. I'm looking at Blind Watchmaker Applet, the Syracuse.
Yeah, if you've never played with the biomorph applets, I highly recommend you do, because it does serve to illustrate how like you can start small, and then generation after generation after generation, you by just following certain rules and by applying these arbitrary selective pressures, you can steer the way they go too.
Yeah.
Like I went and I'm like, okay, all right, this time I'm just going to select the ones that look like an airplane. And 15 generations down the line, you get these biomorph structures that have these 2 large wings, and it has elements on it that reminded me of, either like gun barrels or fuel tanks or stuff like that. And so just by hitting the spacebar, it made this vaguely airplane shape. And you can do it with any shape.
How's that different between selective breeding that we do already?
Oh, exactly. It's no different. I mean, look at the diversity in dogs alone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, actually.
And that's
selective breeding
in
is just
history.
Selective breeding is literally just guided adaptation and phenotypic evolution. That's all it is. It's
and of
it's
course,
just humans applying the evolutionary pressure rather than nature.
And of course, I know that the ID proponent will take that and say, well, that's microevolution and not macroevolution.
Which is
Your
another...
dog didn't become an iguana, or you get guys like Kirk Cameron and the crocoduck, and
yeah, but even that has a very simple, easy way to dismiss it. You can talk about ring species. Ring species are given an animal like the Larus gulls, or the greenish warbler, or the ensatina, which is a salamander that lives in the Central Valley of California. Song sparrows. They, are native to one region initially, and then they move around an area. So, the Ensatina
Right.
salamanders start in one spot, and then they slowly migrated north up the Central Valley, and then down the other side of it, all the way around. And I mean, this process takes generations and generations and generations and generations. And when you go to, if you go here, and then you go here, and then you go here, and then you go here, and you go around, you'll see these same, related salamanders, but in each spot they look slightly different.
Well,
and they can hybridize with the species next to each other, but not all the way around. So when they become a ring species, and they end up migrating back into the original spot where, the descendants, of the original salamanders that left are still there. The two can't hybridize, and they've become different species.
And I see your point, and I absolutely agree with you. But I think you're right that this is what's going to happen is that the ID proponent will move the goalpost on you and say, well, they're still salamanders. Those salamanders didn't become, another kind. And that term "kind" is thrown around a lot. When salamanders become salamanders. There's no change in kind. Now, and I agree. Like, even though you could say, like, look, these are speciation events that have occurred. This salamander started here, he went all the way around, and now he's here, and it's a total different species from A to B. But they'll still say, well, I don't care if it's a species or not. It's still the same kind. And I think that I agree with you, Ken. I think that that's moving the goalpost a little bit, because that's only an observation we can see in our lifetimes. We're talking about geologic time.
Yeah.
That we're not going to be around to see that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem with talking about huge time spans. You're talking about periods of time that are almost incomprehensible, because the average human lives
but we can
70,
see,
80 years.
But if you look in the fossil record, there are transitional species that show that transition of kind.
But wait.
Fossils were buried by the devil in 1947. Yeah.
We had this conversation last week, and our person that left us a comment said that's not what he wanted to. That's not what he's talking about. So how is this relating to what he?
Well, like one of the things that he talks about, and I know I'm trying to get around to that, and I've noticed it's sort of become illuminating in reading his arguments and reading his comments and listening to his arguments, that there's this idea that let's take the flagellum again. Let's go back to the flagellum, and it's 40 proteins arranged just so, and what they maintain is that there's this chain of reasoning that says that there's this necessity of all the pieces and all the proteins in a system, they spontaneously form by chance, and then all the pieces assemble all the right way just by chance. And that is not a claim by evolution at all. Evolution doesn't claim that. Evolution never claims that those things... We say it was assembled by chance, but it was small steps over time. And at every step, every new addition, if it didn't provide some advantage, it wasn't selected for. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Now, how all of this happens is really, becoming up for debate. And one of the things Aaron mentions, he brings up this this guy's review paper. I don't know if you had a chance to read. It was the one that he linked to in his email. And in his review paper, the author sort of highlights. He reviews our understanding of gene duplication. And what they found is that gene duplication is very important to evolution. And so if you're a bacteria and you have a genome of 10 genes, just throw out a round number, 10 genes, there's this mutation event that occurs where, gene number 8 duplicates itself. And then there's like 3 or 4 different ways that the error can happen, but what you get is a duplicate gene. So it has genes 1 through 7, and then 8 and 8, and then 9 and 10. So it has a duplicate gene number 8. And if that gene, from there, that gene, it can go on to do different things. And what they say is that, like, when you get this duplicate gene that has the same function as another gene, it's not advantageous to keep it. So that gene will accidentally fall into a new purpose. And if that new function provides some benefit, then it gets kept. And if not, it goes away.
Yeah, that's and a vast majority of mutations are almost pointless. They just kind of happen by chance, and sometimes they just lag around for a while. They provide no advantage, but they also provide no detriment.
Well, one of the things that he seems credulous about, that he can't believe, is he brings up and incorrectly he says that the author refers to these neutral mutations. There's no such thing as a neutral mutation. Either the mutation provides some advantage or it doesn't, and it could be a deleterious effect. So if it does nothing, then it becomes a pseudogene and it gets deleted eventually down the line. And he's saying that throughout evolutionary history, the birth and death of genes is really, really common. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting wrapped around the axle. So at no point you're never going to have 40 steps to a new function where there's 40 steps of what he would term neutral mutations that have no selective advantage. You're not going to have 40 steps that get you to the flagellum unless every step conferred some advantage. And in the paper, the author notes that he's talking about the step to getting a broader visual spectrum, and he said that it occurs. He surmises that it occurs in 2 steps, and he doesn't say these are 2 steps that had no advantage. He says these were 2 steps. They had different functions, and it would be really interesting to find out what those functions are. And here's how we could do it. And I like that the author does that, because that's what good science does. It asks more questions. It poses more experiments, where ID doesn't pose any experiments at all. It just says these things couldn't happen, thus an intelligent designer did it.
Yeah, it does that, and it says, that's the thing with ideas. It starts from the presupposition of a designer and then tries to work backwards. If you want to find a pattern in chaos, you will find it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the pattern is intentional. Something I bring up in my response is that, the eye, this thing that's held up as irreducibly complex, all the time. I see it almost as often as I see the flagellum. Has evolved separately multiple times on the planet. I believe it's something like 8 separate lineages for the eye, and every single one of them ends very similar to each other, but their function is different, maybe in scope or in design, but generally speaking, the eye functions.
Well, that's that idea is convergent evolution, about how like as far as perceiving the visual spectrum around us, the eye is the best tool to do that. And it turns out that there's probably like 1 or 2 ideal formations of the eye that work best, and it makes sense that different species would get there independently. if there's one, if there's one form or shape that works best, they'll all get there eventually.
Yeah. And something I bring up is that, because he was talking about the Type 3 secretory system and how that's younger than the flagellum, which it could be. But that doesn't mean there wasn't a system similar to the Type 3 secretory system in a cell that is now no longer extant, that the flagellum came from.
Well, he's in that instance, he's mentioning a very recent paper. I forget who the author is, but it's a 2012 paper. Very recently, they've done some work looking at the I forget exactly how they did it, but they come to the conclusion they're very, very sure that the Type 3 secretory system evolved from the flagellum. So I'll admit that. I'll even say, okay, that's probably right. The flagellum came first, and then the Type 3 secretory system came third. But, and you make this point too, the author says that there's some unknown system that the flagellum evolved from. And there's no reason that unknown system can't look a lot like the current Type 3 secretory system today. There's it evolved from something.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. And he says, if you take away the proteins and leave the 10 that make the secretory system, it's only 40% accurate. It doesn't work. To which I say, evolution isn't Legos. It's not, you don't just disassemble it and it's still a working piece. But you take it apart and you go, hey, that looks a lot like this.
Right.
Parts get added to and taken away from.
So in all of this research, I've learned a couple of things. I've learned that there's that chain of logic among the ID thought, and I've noticed that they don't bring up the eye anymore because evolutionary biologists who care about this kind of stuff have had more time to refute the arguments of the eye being irreducibly complex. And so the new thing is the flagellum. And evolutionary biologists have only just started recently addressing this problem with the flagellum. And as far as intelligent design goes among evolutionary biologists, they don't care, which is why it makes it really hard to research it on the side, sort of defending evolution. And if you look up any of these things, most of what you will see are arguments made by intelligent design proponents. The internet is littered with them. It is the amount of information that is in, sort of layman's terms in plain English, arguing on one side or the other. The vast majority is for intelligent design, and it's a very small and very vocal minority of non-scientists. And I know that the ID proponents will say, like, oh, well, we have that list of 1,000 scientists who support intelligent design, and I think it's the National Center for Science Education. They have the Project Steve, where they have 1,000 scientists named Steve who support evolution.
Damn, they one-upped.
Yeah, it's really, and it makes it really hard because like mainstream science is so unequivocally on the side of evolution that they don't really care to address a lot of the arguments of intelligent design. They just can't be bothered. There's only a couple of times.
They're busy doing science.
Yeah, they're busy doing science, I think.
Science is a hard thing to do. I think we're almost out of time, and unfortunately, there's some connection issues, so I'm having a real hard time hearing Bob.
Oh no,
that's hard to believe. You can't hear Bob? What?
You can't hear me all the way to LA?
I can hear maybe every third word you say.
You need to speak louder.
Okay, I'll do that. Jason's shitty equipment.
Aren't we using your card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never had this problem before.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's my card.
Yeah, wow. Weird echo. So I guess this is it for this week. We'll try to get to you a little sooner next week. And Aaron, I hope you find the answers interesting. I look forward to your response. Of course, there's more in the email that I think Bob's sending you.
I will. I'll probably send it tomorrow sometime.
Okay. And other than that, I guess we will see you next week.
Next week?
You can see us on Stitcher, Zombie Popcorn.
Oh, yeah, there's more to that.
Yes. Jason, why don't you take it out?
Yeah, that's fine. Just
Okay.
go to zombiepopcorn.com. You get all the information you need if you want to hook up with us on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, all that. It's all on Zombie Popcorn. Have a good night.
Good night.
And that entire